Bootstrap also includes a number of components that you can use. Components are usually more complex than just a simple HTML element or a single class. They typically require you to write multiple elements and have some specific structure in your HTML. I'll show you an example, but some of these components are interactive. For example, you can create drop-down menus and flyout menus easily with Bootstrap. I don't have time in the course to cover all the components. There's a large number, everything from icons to progress bars, but I'll give you a basic idea of how to work with these components. And if you go to getbootstrap.com and click on the components link, you'll find a list of everything that is included, as well as lots of sample code and descriptions. Let's take a look at a few components in our application. Back in the application, we're actually looking at two components here on the home page of the application. One is the navigation bar at the top of the page. The other one is the Jumbotron with the giant ASP.NET text. The Jumbotron is one of the simpler components of Bootstrap. For the Jumbotron, all you do is add a class of Jumbotron to some div, and then any of the content that is inside of that div will be styled by Bootstrap. The font weight will be a little bit heavier, the font size will be a little bit larger, and the background color changes. All of that is just to provide some emphasis for that particular piece of content. You can also use a well for the same effect. With a well, though, the font size isn't quite as large, the font weight isn't changed, but it still has a different background color, so it stands out a little bit. And if we remove well, then we'll just have plain regular content. What's more interesting to look at is the navigation bar, because the navigation bar, it's rendered by the layout view. It is a little bit more complex. You need a number of divs, you need some list items. If you want that collapsible navigation bar, you have to create that using some spans that are actually using icons to create that bar image, the one that you can click on to drop down the menu. But navigation bars can also be simple. So let me just take this unordered list, because you can do some amazing things with an unordered list. I'm going to copy that. And let's come down here and bring this up into the center of the screen, and I'll create a new row. And in that row, I want a column that will take up 4 units. That's where I'm going to place that unordered list. And then, of course, I'd probably had another div that takes up the remaining 8 units. And that would have some other content inside of it. But for right now, I just want to show you that this is a simple navigation bar, still has a highlighting effect, won't have a collapsible effect. But I do want to point out that the highlighting effect, it's a very square rectangle that highlights that item when the mouse is over it. If I change this to a different component, which is not the navbar nav, but instead navpills, a little less space at the top of the element, but also when I hover over it, it's very subtle, but now we have rounded corners. And if I want to, I could mark one of these as active. That will give it a different background color. And I could also add another class to stack these pills instead of them laying out horizontally. And what if I didn't want these to be pills, navigation pills? What if instead this was some sort of breadcrumb that says the user has now navigated from home to about, and they're inside of contact, which is inside of the about page? Well, in that case, I could just replace all these classes with breadcrumb, another Bootstrap component that will put some dividers between the links. And if instead of a breadcrumb, these links represented different page numbers for a particular article or some sort of data that's being displayed, I could mark this as a pagination control, which appears like this. So many different components in Bootstrap, and most of them are very easy to work with. All you need to do is use some certain HTML structure. Like in many of the components that we just used, all we needed was an unordered list, and then you apply the proper Bootstrap class. If you want to see more components, you can always go to getbootstrap.com/components. And inside of here, you'll see everything from drop-downs to different examples for the navigation bars, also the breadcrumbs, pagination. It's all in here with example code.